Okay. All right, it's looking pretty nice. Here. So good spacing gap there, that's nice. Tail's looking good here. I think the only thing, and this is where you get a little bit nitpicky with spacing. So when you look here, track the tail. So you have there, there, there. So it has like a big gap here, right? And then it slows down. So if it has this kind of speed from here to here, right? Then you wouldn't expect that to slow down really quickly. It kind of slows a bit here. So what I would try to do is look at this and say, well, maybe what I'll do here is this feels a bit like a straight line too. So what I would try to do is maybe lift this one up a little bit and maybe favor. So if I was here, then I might say, well, let's try and go here and then move it up over there and then bring it back over there just to widen that a little, okay? Just to watch the spacing, got a little bit clustered there. Mm-hmm. The other thing you could try to do is watch out, you didn't do it too much, but I would just be careful that the tail doesn't point under the body too much. Okay. So you could try to avoid that feeling like that. That's looking good. Yeah. What I would do here, if you look at that, I would probably keep that like this and then not have the tail break so quickly because you have like a couple frames here on the ground. Just a little bit. And then right here, there's a little bit of a click. So if we look at this, what I would try to do, you're going up. It feels like the tail is kicking up. It's rotating from here to here. This kind of creates a bit of a kink, right? It's a bit straight. Mm-hmm. So what I would try to do is just curl it back down a little bit more. Let me just clear that. Right, so it's the tip of the tail, right, doesn't quite fall forward so quickly. And then you could still do the same thing, have the tail kind of bunch up. Right in there, just changes shape a bit quickly and then kick up. Really minor stuff. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Nice work. Next, wall. Andre. Okay, I think some of the timing, I think here, this is more spacing. I think here I would avoid the squash and stretch going on here, right? So the stretch here, I would keep it a circle. Don't distort this until here. I think that's a good choice. This feels like that's a really big gap. This strobes a bit. So what I might do is move this down a little bit, just so you don't have such a big gap from here to here. With the tail, if you have that, I would try to favor the tip of the tail, favor where it's coming from, and then have it fall down. I think here, when you lift off, so here you have like your squash, your stretch, then you should lift up, boing, get some air time, right? Really push the spacing. Just like you did on the drop down, same thing on the way up. This feels a bit even in here, very evenly spaced. So just watch the spacing there. Same thing here. You could probably maybe adjust this a little bit, just a little lower. It's a bit of a big gap. It strobes just a little. The tail's working better here, but watch this. So here we have the tail like this, and then here it feels like it didn't change shape. What I would do is really have that sort of flick down, and you might even be able to get away with even more change. So you're here, maybe more like this, and just sort of curl the tip of the tail a little and then crack the whip, right? So it just sort of straightens out and then starts to arc up. So that when you get to here, then you kind of flow into that shape. Okay? And then here, I think I would reduce this. If you look at this position and this one, it feels like you're grabbing this part and stretching just from here, and this is being held, right? That's fixed. So you could probably get away with much less squash and stretch. Here it's too much. I think you could just do very little for such a small bounce compared to the others. I would tone that down. Okay?
I think he's with Fleur.
Ah, well, it's on the recording. And then right over here, I think I would just watch some of the spacing. You can see, looking at this distance, sorry there, it feels like we're not moving very much. going this way. And then we get a big push. So it feels like a gust of wind kind of catches it. And then when you look at the tail, it feels like we start to slow down. If you look at the distance you're traveling here and here, that's getting much less. So it feels like we're slowing down as we go this way. So watch the speed, the spacing going this way. It should be a straight line, right? So that would probably be the translate Z, I'm guessing. Okay. Daniela. Yeah, looking all right. I think again, maybe here. Yeah, I think the tail, it stays in the same place. So it stays quite upright. And I'd like it to fall. So what I would try to do is if you have that pose, right, what you could try doing is you could try to straighten this one out and then have it compress a little bit and break and fall. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There. And then around the arc here, don't have it angle up too quickly. I would save the straighter poses for when you're going down this way. So that's like the straightest you're going to get. So at the high point, try to keep it round and following the arc, right? So the tail basically just follows the arc and then have it straighten out here. And I wouldn't have it move so far this way because it'll feel like what's going to happen is the tail would flop on its head right here. But what we want to have it do is follow behind. So what I would try to do is again, the same kind of pattern, have it kind of gather up the looseness here, right? So the tail kind of compresses down and starts to buckle and fall out. And then pull it down here. Boom. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. And the same idea here. Let's straight and then have it kind of compress down, drop a little bit more, and then get a lot straighter as you kick off. And then in here, again, make sure the tail, if you can see that the ball is going this way, the tail should be following that, right? It should be feeling the pull of that. Right now, it feels almost like the tail is wagging, right? So it feels like the animal is wagging the tail as opposed to just being gravity. Okay?
Thanks.
Okay. And Danette. Oh, I see two of them. Is version 2 the right one, Danette?
Yeah, it's better than the first one,
Oh,
but
okay. Okay. All right. So here, I think this is too high. Don't have them go off screen. So adjust the high point. Maybe make the high point something like this.
okay.
Right. And what I would do here, you have the shape of the tail like this. Then what I would try to do is for the anticipation, right? You have this. Imagine that part kind of resisting it.
Okay.
Okay. So it's kind of like doing that, right? And then lifting up. And then here, watch the spacing. The spacing is very even. So have a look in the graph editor, right? So this would be your translate Y. So this would be the high point, and then you'd be going to the next impact, right? And make sure that this part here, if there's a big part of it that feels like a straight line, then you need to adjust that. So what I would usually do to fix that is go here and say, well, here's my position. And then I would look at, well, this is my high point, and then this is my landing. Then the frame just before this one, so say this is 26, 25 would be here. And then I would let the graph editor help me get from here to here. And I'd go, okay, maybe then here, and then this would be, maybe we do 23 there, right? Just keep cutting that in half. But you want a nice big gap before you hit the ground, okay? And it feels like you're also using the stretch control. Keep it a circle as long as possible, only for the stretch pose, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same issue for the tail. Again, what I would do is when it lands, pull the tail straight back, and then have the tip of the tail continue to fall as the base buckles, right? And you kind of crack the whip. And then lead into the arc, okay? Avoid any shape like this where it feels like this is sticking out from the path, right? The tail should basically follow the shape of the arc, especially stuff like this. When you have like this big angle change, click one frame, that's gonna feel like the animal wagged the tail, and it really pops over one frame. It won't feel like movement, it'll just feel like a mistake, okay? Same issue with spacing, it's too even. Watch the spacing, And then same thing with the tail. Again, try to follow that curve, right? Keep the shape of the tail in line with the direction you're going, a nice curved shape, and have that feed in to the landing. And then same idea, same kind of pattern. Oops. And then from here, I think this jump, I wouldn't jump so high. I would make this kind of a nicer bounce, right? Just a decent level of height, but this feels like we kind of go really high up and then over, right? So it feels a bit like a corner, okay?
Okay, thank
Just
you.
more symmetric. All right. Diego. Okay, so haven't worked on the tail yet, I assume. What I would suggest here, watch out for the stretch control. Keep it a circle as long as possible and then stretch, then squash. If this is more like this, that would be better, right? So maybe lift this up a little bit and make it more of a circle, just so the spacing doesn't get too even. And then you have your stretch, squash. Here you have two poses of stretch that are the same. So what I might do is maybe back off the squash on this one a little bit so you have a little bit of compression. So it continues to squash, right? So think of this as like 100% squashed, and maybe this is like 90%. So it gives you a little bit of change. And then you push up, and again, watch the spacing. So if this is your high point and you had your stretch pose, then the frame right after that should be way up here. So really big, look at the height, right? And you can see what happens is you don't move that far. You could probably get rid of this one and just go right to this pose. So you get up there a little bit higher, okay? Same thing here, the spacing's a bit even on the way down, right? Make sure you have that big gap before you hit the ground. And watch the stretch. Yeah, it's going a bit early. You shouldn't stretch here just for the one frame. And then up here, again, you could probably reduce the number of frames. It's very evenly spaced, but it also feels like maybe there's too many frames. You kind of get high point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, maybe you could try 4 or 5 frames because your high point is basically here and you're looking from here to here. This would be a really short amount. So if you were doing, I don't know, like 8 frames here, I wouldn't expect this to be 6 frames. That would probably be too much. I would probably start with 5 and 4 and work my way down just because this is a much shorter arc, okay? And then when you lift off, it feels like we get up in the air really quickly, like 2 frames, boom, boom, and then we kind of float, 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 and then accelerate here. What I would try to do is get the character off screen a little bit more so that they're traveling up and over and we won't see them. What'll happen is if you look at the edge of frame, the last thing you're gonna see is the tail kind of landing flat on its own. And I'd rather just have the character out of sight, out of mind, it just goes, okay?
Hello, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay, Flora, how's it going?
Could you be able to, could you enable participants sharing their screen because they can't share it and I can't see.
I'm so sorry. Let me, can I do that to stop my share and then go there? Okay.
Yeah,
Not to
awesome.
work. Okay,
Thanks.
no problem. Sorry about that, Flora. Okay, where were we? Yep, okay. So it's Diego. Dominique. Looking nice, Dominique. You get some nice snappy spacing here. Again, I would just recommend don't stretch too early. It feels like it's just drifting. So it starts to feel a little bit like Jello. It's just kind of oozing its way to the bottom there. Keep it a circle until you need it to stretch. And you could probably, I bet you could get rid of this. You could go from here to here. So you might be able to just pull one frame out of there if you wanted. The action of the tail's working pretty good. I think there's just a big spacing pop. So here, if you look at the shape, you have kind of a
Can I
curve.
speak with you?
Sorry, hello?
No, brother, I wanted to speak with Flo.
Yeah.
Oh.
Can you move him to the
Oh, yeah,
breakout,
sure.
please? Thank you.
Sure, 1 second, okay? Where am I? Okay. Can I put in, oh, did the breakout room close?
No, apparently we were having some restrictions with screen sharing, and apparently Fleur was not able to give me nor David some privileges
okay.
for screen sharing.
Let me put you in there. Where's David? Oh, well, I think from what I'm seeing, it looks like David needs to be assigned. Yeah, you can join, David.
Okay.
It says that you should be able to join, like you're already technically supposed to be in there. Can you guys not join?
Sure.
Let's see. Because yeah, I've already moved you into the room, so you should be able to just join the room.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's see, can I move? Yeah. Let me see.
Sure.
Can you join, David? I think Martin was able to.
Just a second. Share screen, join.
Okay, I'm going to continue. So with the tail, look from here. Keep that curve, and then what happens is the tip of the tail goes that way, and then it has to zigzag right over here, so it creates a really strong snap. So what I would try to do is keep the tail point here, and then imagine that you're going to animate it coming back this way to hook into that. Okay? Does that make sense, Dominique?
I have a question.
Mm.
What do you think about the time? I think that the bouncing is too fast, but I don't know. I just.
It's a bit snappy. I think the second bounce, this one maybe could use a little bit of spacing work, but I don't mind it. It's kind of cartoony. I like it. So it's not wrong. I think it's a matter of style, right? I think it's just working with what you've got planned here. So what I would suggest is don't stretch, right? Keep it a circle. That way you get more shape change of that one frame. And then here the spacing does get a little bit even. If you kind of look in here particularly, it's a bit even, so you could adjust it. Here you have some nicer changes, especially this last one. You kind of really jump up and then land. So just avoid that stretch control, using that too much. It's just drifting too much, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just a little thing to do with just the tail, just to avoid the tail going to the right and then snapping to the left. So it goes, right, you get this really abrupt change there. And that'll just strobe a bit, okay? But yeah, I like it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. This bounce here, this was the only one where you could play around a little with the spacing. If you wanted, what I would do is look at where you are here, and then here, and that's very even. So what I would look at is where's the high point, where's the low point, and then I would really put a position halfway. So this would be a really big jump, and I would just play around to see, does that work? Or do I need to move it down a little bit? Does it need to be here? But you want that to be a big gap. Okay, right now it's a bit soft, right? So we don't have a big acceleration there. That's the only thing. All right, so a little bit of stuff with the tail and just playing around with the spacing.
Okay.
Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Dylan.
I'm realizing now that I missed a bounce.
Yes, I was just gonna say, whoops. So fix that, jump over here, hit there, and jump up and then out.
Yeah.
And I think here, during the arc, keep the tail curved. Make it follow the path that we're going. Otherwise, this shape, all of a sudden when it straightens out, it just stands out so different. It feels like everything stops being flexible and fluid. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to work on. I was like, why does this look a little odd?
Yeah, no, it's close, just a little bit of tweaking. And then I'd have a little bit of a curl at the end of the tail just so it can whip here. Now this, I would avoid having it do this, curving under, right? Because that almost feels like it's firing an attack. Right? Right? Right, and you have like a nice impact here. Right, so it feels like it's slapping something, right?
Right, because technically he's not using the tail as momentum, he's using his body.
Yeah. So what I would do is keep the tail end curved up as long as you can and just crack the whip when you get to here.
Right, and don't have the end of the tail come under him, basically.
Yeah. And keep it more curved. And right in here, again, when you fix it with the bounce, that will help.
Yeah,
It's got a bit flat in there. Oh,
Yeah.
the chat going. What's happening? Is any more issues in the chat window? Where'd it go? I don't see the chat window. Where did the chat window go? Sorry, guys, just 1 second here. There we are. Okay. Oh, David, you can't join the breakout room? Let me see. Ah, there we go. Assign to breakout room. There you go. Okay. All right. And then same issue on the way out, just watch the spacing. It's very evenly spaced. And then here, same thing, try to avoid having the tail curve under the body too much on the way out. All right?
Okay.
And then this part feels a bit like a straight line, just kind of evenly spaced. So just maintain that speed and where it would accelerate in a good arc. Okay?
Cool.
Excellent. Israel. Nice. I think the only thing I would change here, Israel, is this last bounce. It feels a bit even and a bit sort of low energy. I would really try and push this up just a little bit more. This feels kind of like a straight line. It feels a bit even, and then we kind of pull down. So you can have like this, and then it really sharply angles down. So try and get that arc in there, okay?
Okay.
Yeah. And another thing I might try is when you look at the tail, it sort of stays the same shape. It doesn't feel like it falls. So it feels a little bit floaty. So what I would try to do is when you get to here, maybe what I would do is I would try to keep the tail a little bit straighter, right, on the landing, so that it gives you a bit more time to work with. So you can kind of change the shape, curve it around, and then hopefully that will flow if you kind of get this to really jump up a little bit higher. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. It looks more like a whip, no?
Yeah. There we go. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Jiyun. Are you there, Jiyun? Hopefully they can hear me.
Yes, I'm here.
There we go. Okay, so the one thing I'm seeing here is a little bit of an offset is needed. So what happens is when you land here, the tail stays up, right? And it rolls this way. And then over one frame, it goes here. So it doesn't feel like it's falling anymore. It feels like it just holds here. So what I would try to do, that's looking good. What I would do is make the tail feel like it's falling. So look at the tip, right? That's the length. And have it start to compress and feel like it's actually falling down. And then maybe have that, where am I gonna go? Get rid of this. Okay. And then over here, again, the tail feels like it kind of stays the same angle, right? So it kind of feels like it's not moving in an arc for a little bit there. So you kind of get that shape. As you go up, that might pull the tail down a little bit, and then it would start to arc up as it followed the path of the ball. Okay? Does that make sense? Similar issue here. You can see the tail, this part and this part, they don't move very much. They just stay locked almost in the same place. So what we want to show is that everything is starting to fall and compress. And then you get a nice straight line here. And then same idea, arc the tail. Keep that nice arc going. Okay, and same idea here. Have that fall. And then here, really straight on your way up. Okay? Does that make sense?
Oh, yep.
Okay. Thank you, Jiyun. And Johnny. Okay, I think what I would recommend, Johnny, is it feels like the posing of the tail. I think you have the right idea, but it feels like the first segment, you could rotate up a bit more. So I would like to see, this feels like it's always coming out. So that's pointing this way, then that's pointing this way. So it feels like this is not very flexible. So what I would try to do is when you're blocking this out, this is good. Have that pose change, but then here, everything starts to get really straight. So watch out for the straight line. Keep that curved, right? So it should be more like this. Okay? And then when you hit the platform here, keep that really straight, and then have the tail unfurl a little more gradually. Okay? Does that make sense? Don't know if they're there to hear me.
Yeah, it makes sense. Oh, it's Jimmy, by the way.
Oh, sorry. Did I say Jimmy? I said Ginny? Sorry. The letters are so small, my old eyes can't tell M's and N's apart. In this part, it feels a bit linear and very evenly spaced. So what I would do is maybe get rid of this position and have a bigger gap between when you hit the ground and that position just before, right? Looking at the high point going from here to here, right? So do like a halfway from there to there, okay? And a bit more energy. And then right over here, you're going up at this speed, and this feels a bit flat. So it feels like we kind of go up to the high point, we kind of glide over, and then we kind of roll down. And even here, it's evenly spaced, right? So you could definitely push the space in there a little bit more. Just watch the arc a little. The other thing too is if you look at the timing on this, right? The tail is down, exact same frame as the stretch is happening. And then it sort of stops moving, right? So I think we better have like, 1, 2, right? So it's a bit more overlap. So I would try to have the tail really pulled down when the ball is actually in the air, okay? Because it feels like you're cracking the whip, but a bit early. So it feels like the tail is straightening out before I'm pulling, right? So it feels just a little bit early, okay? You get a little bit more power out of it that way. Make sense, Jimmy?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, John. Okay, let's have a look. So spacing could use a little bit of work. Just watch out for the stretch. I would only stretch here, yes, but not anywhere before that. Keep it a circle. And then I think the posing on the tail, it's too straight in here. And then here, I would keep this. This is when you'd want the tail to be pulled back really straight and then have it collapse, right? So it kind of keeps falling, compresses down, bunches up until you get to here. Okay? At this point, it should be just pulled straight down. And then again, the tail should follow an arc. Right now, the shape, it's very straight. And then it has this little curl in it just at the tip. So this doesn't feel that it's this that is leading it, right? This is the direction we're traveling, but the tail doesn't feel like it's being pulled or being acted on by any of those forces there. If anything, it feels like there's force acting here, but it should be this is pulling, okay? So it doesn't feel like they're as connected as it could be. So I would really try to get that shape like this. Watch your spacing as well, very even. So I would try to push the spacing in between the landing and that frame here, really move that up more so you have a bigger gap and much stronger acceleration. Here the tail, it's just kind of covering the head. So again, straight, and then have the tail buckle and fall. And I think you're on the ground for a long time. 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. You could probably just get away with 2, maybe 3 at most if you did sort of like a stretch, squash, stretch, right? Then it would give you a lot more energy, okay? And then here, again, direction of force, right? If I'm pulling this way, drag would be this way at the top of the arc. Then this would start to pull, keep it a nice curved shape as it goes around the top of the arc and have it lead in the same pattern I was mentioning for the other bounces, okay? Have a look at the example, that'll help. Okay, Johnny?
Okay.
Caitlin, I think there are 2 of them here. Should I look at the one with the 2?
It's the same.
It's the same? Okay.
I think I just changed the name of the folder.
Ah, gotcha. Okay. One thing you can do is you can trim off the extra frame. So as soon as this is gone, we have like all this extra footage here. You can just trim. Okay, Caitlin? So you only need to export out to like frame 76.
Okay, yeah, I didn't even see that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And then here, yeah, you could, I would definitely get a bigger gap. I would probably have this, then the stretch. So you don't need this. So I would take this pose and move it to that frame. Right, so this is frame 20, move that to 21, get rid of the pose that's already there, and then you have this. Make sure you have a big gap, right? Nice acceleration. And I think the angle of the tail, this is looking good. I would round that out a little bit more here. And then right when you get to the impact, keep that very straight. Don't have the tail arc over the head like that. I keep it behind and have it fall. And you get this nice snap. And then have it arc up and over. And here you can see it feels like the tail moves very quickly. It doesn't feel like it's following the arc anymore, and it gets very straight. So in this part, keep it really curved. It's just flowing over that arc, and then it'll lead right into the straight pose. Again, similar note, the spacing's a bit even. You could probably hang on to this one, get rid of that one, and go right to here. Get a better spacing pop. Same pattern with the tail. Do the same thing that I was drawing over here. Have the tip of the tail arc behind and snap. Okay. And same note about spacing. Spacing's a bit even before you hit the ground. Get a bit more punch by having a bigger gap before you hit the platform. Okay? Does that make sense, Caitlin?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Nicole. Nice. So the tail is moving pretty well. There's a few places where it kind of strobes. So one thing I would try to avoid is anything like this. This feels almost like the tail's being curled a little too tightly. I'd prefer it to feel a bit more like an arc, so a bit more of a smooth line. So that leads into here. And then same note, I would try to look at the tail and have it still arc back a little bit more and fall a little bit. Okay? And then that looks all right. Over here, it feels like the tail is flicking up. Try to have it just follow the arc as much as possible. Just kind of trace the arc for the ball and map the tail on there so it just sort of crests over the arc a little more gracefully, not so quickly. An abrupt change in angle happens like over, there's like a couple frames, 1, 2, and it goes from down to up. So it's a very quick rotation, make it more gradual. And the same thing here, same pattern, bring this back, have the tail break on the other side as opposed to going towards the front of the character. But you're getting a nice gap here. That's a really big pop, that's cool. You could probably get rid of the stretch here, right? So just keep it a circle. And these two are really close. So you could almost see if you need them both. You might say, well, I guess I'll just look at the high point. But you're keeping a good gap, which is good. Make sure you have a good gap between here and here. And the same thing for the last landing. This one feels a bit too much. I think going from here to here, that feels a bit like a strobe. It doesn't feel like it's moving as well as it could. So if you look at the high point, if that's how high you're gonna go, then you probably do a bigger stretch, right, because you're really jumping very high, and then get something in the middle a little, okay? Feels like you're a bit high up. And then the last little frame, the tail wiggles. So you have like, it's in frame, and you just see it just click, and then it's gonna be gone. So what'll happen is it will feel that the tail really changed shape the last couple of frames, because we're only gonna see here, right? And it feels like there's a lot of movement in just the 2 last frames it's on screen, which would be distracting. So you just kind of keep it just moving out of shot, and then you might see the tail just a little bit there. All right?
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Sophia. Wow, looking nice, Sophia. You did one more bounce. You didn't have to do that last one. You could have just done this. Whoop, just go off screen.
Is that true?
Sorry, say that again, please.
No, nothing.
Oh, but it's totally fine. It's just more work for you. As long as you're doing the work well, I don't mind.
Okay, thank you.
Here, watch out for the stretch. I would probably, again, this is more my own taste, but I would try to do like a stretch and then go into the squash on the platform. And then here you could move this up a little bit more. So you can get a little bit bigger spacing gap, right? It's working pretty well. It's just a tiny little thing I would try. For this first frame, right, tail's in a good spot, but then it feels like it holds and then it starts to fall. So keep the tip of the tail falling. Right, just arching it back. Get a little bit more movement out of it. That's a little better. Again, the tip of the tail is really close here, so I would see if you could move it out to the side a little bit more, so it would kind of bunch up here. There. Okay. And then in this part, it feels a bit like a straight line. Just watch your arc in there. That feels just a bit linear. Put a motion trail on there and check it out. But nicely done. Minor
Okay. Thank you.
Tom, oh, there's two. It's like version 2. Tom? Okay, good. So I'm glad you put the motion trail in there. That helps.
Yeah, actually, I resubmit also an O3 because just resubmitted like.
Oh, okay. Okay, let me see if I can grab it, Tom. 1 sec here. F5. Number 3. All right.
Why? Okay. There is not the motion trail this time, right?
That's okay. I don't mind for a rough presentation. That's fine. Final, I would say, yeah, take it off. So the only thing that feels a bit off to me is this. So I think when you look at this arc, really check it with the motion trail. But something about this feels a little off. It feels like if you look at the distance, you're moving this way, right? So that speed, and then here is a big kick. This really jumps this way. So this over this one frame, right? These two frames really jump over, and then we hit here, right? So just watch the speed there. It feels a little asymmetric. It feels like we're really being pushed, slanted this way a lot more than this direction, right? So it feels like there's like a big change in the shape over there. Okay.
Yeah. So should I add another point or?
I think I would just put the motion trail on and have a look. And it just feels like over here, you might need more frames. So right now it feels like you have like 1, 2, 3 frames. So try another frame, try 4 frames and see if that helps give you a little bit more room to kind of round out that arc a little bit more. And you could also experiment. If you look at the spacing, you're like here and then here, they're very close, right? The top is very close. So what I would look at is if you're here and that's the high point and you're trying to get to this point, if you put a really big stretch, the problem is the heights are so similar, you can barely move. So what I would try to do is maybe tone down that stretch, right? So it's more like a circle, just a little bit of distortion. So you have the room to really favor the high point, but sort of keep the spacing really close to the top and then bigger spacing just when you get to this point. Okay?
Yeah, got it.
And then over here, you're slowing down and then it feels like we kind of have a straight line over here. So it feels like the arc kind of goes up and it's like it has a plateau and then we go down. So watch that area over there. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Okay, that was Tom. Wushik. Okay, so pretty close. I think the timing with the sphere is looking okay. What I would try to do is maybe you could get more of a gap. So this position, it's a bit even. It's kind of in the middle. If you look at where this one is and this one is and this one is, I would push this one up a little bit more. So I would try to favor the halfway point. So the easy thing would be get rid of this one and just have this one. So if this is 22, right? Take 21, right? And make that 22. So put that one there. And then that way you'll be up a little bit higher. Okay, so get rid of 22, use 21, and then go to their stretch and squash. I think the tail needs some work over here. So as we lift off, keep that curve. So this should just be following the ball and it shouldn't change shape until the ball starts to fall. And then you can have it break and do kind of our thing. I think what happens here is you have these very straight poses, so it doesn't feel as flexible. It feels like it's just one rigid piece. And if I count how many frames, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 frames on the platform, I think it's too many. Try 3 frames. Just try and do like a stretch, a squash, a stretch, and then go up. Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Right now you have 5 frames. I think it's just too much time.
Okay.
Okay. And then similar note here, just watch the spacing. It's a bit even.
Yeah.
Move this one up a little more. Same note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames. Yeah, you could definitely put this to 3 frames again. Really tone that down. And the same thing with the last one. So it feels like we're sticking to the landings a little long, click, click, click. So you could definitely speed that up a little more. And I think in here, the tail, it needs to follow the path a little bit more closely. Okay, and I think you're just on the ground too long and then snap it up. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Yusuke. Okay, I think the tail seems like it's maybe doing too much. It feels like the animal is wagging the tail very aggressively. It doesn't feel like it's the movement of the ball. So here, this is a nice gap, but it feels maybe like we're pushing things too far. So what I might do is maybe move this one down a little bit. It feels like that's strobing a bit. And maybe what you could do, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, 5 frames. Try only having 3 frames of contact. So try having a stretch, a squash, and a stretch, and see if that works. That'll give you a much snappier bounce, and it'll be easier to work with the tail. And then when you shoot up over here, does that make sense, Yusuke?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Here, the tail feels like it's being used to hit something. So it feels like we've got like a hockey puck coming in here. Right? So it feels like it's smacking something underneath as opposed to being pulled, right? So I think the problem is it's just rotating too far down and it doesn't feel like this. The main force is this. So if this feels like the bigger reaction is a rotation and it doesn't relate to the movement, then it must be muscles. It must be the tail. The animal is doing that deliberately to hit something.
Okay.
So just watch that. It'll feel like it's wagging the tail. Same note here, I wouldn't have the tail land here. Always keep the tail behind the animal, right? So if it's landing like this, break the tail here. Yeah. And then have it start to fall. Similar note, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames of contact. Try just 3. And these last bounces, you could probably reduce the amount of squash and stretch too. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Aaron. Okay, with the bounces, I think this last bounce, make that a nice big bounce. I think this one feels a little bit low energy. So we just have this huge squash and then we don't go anywhere. So it feels like they hit heavy air. It feels like all that energy didn't go anywhere. So it just feels like kind of a balloon deflating, just gonna, right, there's nothing there. So I would really push up. And if you have like a squash, you may even be able to get away. It's a short bounce, so probably you can't get away with like that big a squash because you don't have a big height. So what I would try to do is you have your contact, you could try to stretch just a little bit, squash a little bit, and then stretch a little bit, and then try and go up and then zing out. Okay? Just to get a little bit more energy. Watch the tail. There's some places where if you look at the tail, it kind of does it over 1 frame, it does that. So it doesn't feel like there's a lot of flow. It's not flowing in. So you got to kind of get that curve and keep the curve going until you have this big change in direction. And then again, crack the whip. If you bounce up a little bit higher, right? If you make this a bigger bounce, then it gives you more energy. So that's another solution you could have is that, yeah, I really want to have a bigger bounce so that I can really jump out of here and go that way. So you could try to correct this as well. This feels a bit even. This last jump in particular, it's very evenly spaced and it does feel a bit like a straight line, not as much of an arc as I would like. Okay. Similar note here with the tail sticking out straight. Try to always follow the action of the ball, right? So try and curl this thing down. And then just start arcing. Always keep that shape. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
And Adam. Oh, this is not from the camera, Adam.
My bad. It's just
Oh.
a whole bunch of, mess up.
That's okay. What I see here, it's mostly spacing. So I think here, the liftoff, if you look at the spacing, it's very close here, and then it's bigger here. So we have sort of like ease out, ease in. So it feels like the graph editor is doing this. So remember for like the translate Y, what we would do is go to all the low points, right? And break them, right? So you have like all these different jumps, right? Up and down. And what you want it to look like is this, right? So you put in the point there, make sure the tangents are there, That way it won't feel quite so floaty, right? Because it's floating up at the top, floating down, floating up. So
That
you
makes
just gotta
sense
go in and
because
adjust the
I
tangents.
changed it to the top version because I was like, oh, maybe it makes more sense like this. But yeah, no, that makes more
Okay.
sense.
And the other thing I would do is start with like the start pose. This would be like frame 1, and then maybe frame 7, do an antic or a squash. So what you would do is this would be frame 1, then frame 7, right? You would prepare, right? So it'd be a squash, and then frame 8, you would do like a stretch. And then you'd figure out, okay, well, where's my high point? Spacing, and then think about again, you're gonna land here. You're starting from over here. Get your path in and then make sure, okay, wherever that contact is, if this is 15, then what I might do is, okay, if that's where I'm landing, what I might do is maybe make 15 a stretch, and then 14 would be here, and then 16 would be a squash, right? So you do like a squash, and then a stretch, and then same pattern, right? Then you go up and figure out where you're gonna go, grab the high point, put in the contact as a stretch, and then look at that height from here to here. Grab that and be like, okay, halfway, I'll do a point there. So you get a nice big gap, nice landing, and then same pattern over here. Okay?
Yeah. Is there a way to add frames into the Play Blast portion?
Oh, no, not to the Play Blast. You can only do it in the Maya file. You could try to slow it down in Premiere, but it's such a headache to get the speed right. It's faster to go to Maya. You'd be just guessing forever. So much easier just to go into Maya, add the frames or take away frames there. Okay? All right. Yeah, much better. What I would do here is again, track these points. So you see right here, they're almost in the same spot. And then here and here, they're very close together. So I like the idea of it falling. So what I would do is you have this point, get rid of this pose. So this is at 17. Take the pose at 18 and move that to 17. So what we'd want to do is instead of it sticking here, we'd want this to fall a little bit.
Okay.
And then push 18 down more and then straighten out this one. And then what you can do here is kind of curve that up and then start to lead it into the arc at the top. Okay?
Okay.
You could probably straighten this back even more, particularly at this point. This one is probably all right, but you could really straighten the tail out. And same thing, if you look at how close those are, you could definitely play around with the shape a little bit more and see how I'm gonna have it buckle at the base and then rotate down and just barely miss slapping the ground and then pull the thing right back up. And over here, there's a few frames where the tail feels a bit straight and all of a sudden click, it just changes shape. I wouldn't change the shape like that because that seems to fight the whole idea of the arc, right? Which had a shape like that. Keep the shape really in line with the main direction you're going. Try to keep that parabola in there until you get to here and then break the shape.